let's face it, a lot of people only hire to their own level. You said you hire people better than you. So what are those 5 criteria that allow you to do that?
Better than me or have the potential to be better than me. That's kind of the criteria. So the first step is rapport, right? Just like me and you had when we kicked off this call before we went live. You're very good at that. You're very good at building relationships. So that's one of the first things I look. Would I buy from this individual, right? At a very simple level. So getting to know their background, tell me about your background, tell me where you're from. I want to know all that stuff because that helps me understand the candidate at a deep level. So I look at, number one, would I buy from this individual? The second thing I look at is kind of like me and you talked about is has that individual gone through any adversity in their life? And that could be sports, it could be activities, it could be sometimes personal experiences, but have they ever had to achieve anything? Because like you and I both know, sales is a very tough industry. It can be tough if you're not tougher.
And now the man you've been waiting for, Jon, the sales machine, Rankins.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest has over 15 years of sales experience, winning several accolades such as Rookie of the Year, Territory Manager of the Year, Founders Award, Best 2 years combined. He's been in the President's Club and has helped lead his team to multiple Regions of the Year awards. As a regional manager, he has led his team to first or second place finishes 5 out of the last 6 years, has coached and developed Rookie of the Year award winners, Representative of the Year winners, and each year coaches one more territory manager to achieve his President's Club. He is the author of Relentless Sales. Please welcome Jon Alwinson.
Jon, so good to be with you. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Tell me, what do you like about Atlanta?
Not the traffic, that's for sure. Don't like the traffic, but I do love the culture. I love the environment. I love being in the southeast portion of the U.S., so it's home for me.
Right on. Are you an Atlanta Falcons fan?
I am. Now I am. I'm originally from Orlando, so I pull for anything in Central Florida, but I pull for the Falcons now.
Yeah, and Falcons have completely rebuilt their team, eh?
It's wild. Yeah, they're making some interesting moves.
Yeah, interesting moves. And, what's funny is I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so the head coach that just got fired from Atlanta is now our offensive coordinator. So
yeah,
let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he shakes out all right. So we'll see.
Yep, it's an interesting league. So anyway, tell me, Jon, obviously you're a leader in sales. You've won several awards and you're in the med tech industry. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the first thing you've ever sold.
Yeah, so my brother actually and I, out of college, we started a footwear company called Arcs Outdoors, and we started manufacturing shoes over in Asia. And so we were selling those throughout the U.S. And so, I would say that was my big first intro to sales was manufacturing shoes, selling them to the U.S. We had about 150 small mom and pop shops throughout the U.S. that we sold to. So we made a good run and did that for about 5.5 years after college.
Did you sell out to Nike?
I wish. We, as you can imagine, 2 young guys starting a company, we made every mistake in the book. And I talk about it in my book, Relentless Sales. And, we made every mistake in the book, from overlapping job responsibilities to I was new to sales. And that's really what kickstarted me in my sales career. It was that sting of failure and not making it the way I wanted to that really made me commit to a lifelong journey of learning the game of sales.
Yeah. And, I love the game of sales. You talk about that in your book, having that relentless mentality. Talk to me about that. How did you develop that relentless mentality as far as your own key to success in sales?
I think it was from an early age. Growing up, I was a little brother. My brother is 2 years older than me, always beat me up, and so kind of having that little brother syndrome, being a skinny guy, small guy. I think you learn at an early age, like if I'm going to make it in this world, I need to toughen up a little bit. So I think that kick-started my journey into not giving up. But I have to give my dad a ton of credit. My dad is one of my heroes and best friends. And he really at an early age preached the appropriate identity And, as an Alwinson, we were never allowed to give up. And that was just kind of the standard.
Right on. I love the standard. I love, the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, always says the standard is the standard, right? It's one thing to have goals, right? But it's another thing to have standards and habits, because your habits are going to determine your results, being relentless. Do you know Tim Grover?
I do.
Yeah, Tim's a badass.
He is. He's a good man. And he wrote the book Relentless, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
He wrote, and he was the coach of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I totally resonate with you as far as having an older brother who was a bully, because my earliest days in sales was knocking on doors when I was like 9.
Yeah.
And we were just there to pull your weeds or mow your lawn or do whatever we could to make some money. But my older brother, I have to thank him, because he would never go to the door. He would push me and he'd say, go up there and ask them. Go up there and ask them. So that's how I cut my teeth in sales, by going knocking on doors. And my older brother, who still doesn't do sales, he pushed me really to just get comfortable in sales. So I want to ask you, though, because you're in med tech sales, and I've done door-to-door sales. I've been a newspaper boy. I've sold cosmetics, skincare, car care, software, advertising services. I've worked with, doing credit cards and even ADT alarms. Like, I've done it. Lots of different sales, even selling from the stage, selling in boardrooms, selling one-on-one, selling one-on-many. Talk to me about your journey in sales and how you evolved, your sales skills have evolved.
Yeah. I mean, early ages, I didn't even get to this, excuse me. But my dad growing up was a pastor of all things, knew nothing about business, knew nothing about sales. But he would always pull me aside after church, and he'd point to guys just like you, John, who were very successful business owners, and said, "Hey, this guy John over here, he is a small business owner. I don't know much about his business, but if you can set up a coffee or lunch with him, I'll pay for it." And so I grew up with a dad who would always do that for me, and I think it was his way of like, I don't know what to do with my John, right? He never knew what to do with me. And so what he would do is just intro me to a lot of the people in the church. And I'm very fortunate to have a wide variety of mentors that are mentors to this day because of my dad. And so, that's the starting place. That's the true starting place for me, where I grew up with a dad that kind of pointed me in the right direction, even though he didn't know the exact way.
Well, that's funny you say that, because my hero in sales is Zig Ziglar. He says it's all about SSS. Service, solve problems, and make sure they're satisfied, and they'll keep coming back. And so I would say your dad definitely knows how to sell, because right off the bat, he's coming from service. And when you're in service, never nervous.
That's right.
Because then it's all about them, not about you, right? So I like your dad already.
Good man. When your mind's on, it's hard to be nervous when your mind's on service, I like to say.
Yeah, when you're just in service, like, I hear a lot of individuals, and I've literally trained tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, I'm not good at sales, or I don't want to do sales. And I always go back to, do you like helping people, right? Do you like serving people? Because for me, sales is not something I do to you. Sales is something I'm doing for you. I'm going to help you. And I love helping people. Once you can flip that switch in the individual and allow them to understand. A lot of people say, well, you're selling yourself all the time. You have to sell yourself to your kids, your wife, and every. Well, if you're just always in service, sales is joyful.
You're solving problems. You're helping others. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've built and scaled sales teams yourself, and you got lots of awards for your coaching. What are the most effective hiring strategies, would you say, to building high-performing sales teams?
Yeah, so I take a lot from one of my mentors, Mike Weinberg, who is a phenomenal author and coach. And so I'm actually very slow to hire. It's funny, I'm going through that process right now in 2 of my markets. There's some promotions going on my team. And so I'm actually hiring right now. And so I'm in the thick of it. And I have a very distinct hiring process, I look at 5 different criteria minimal. But it's multiple interviews for me. I like to get multiple eyes. I like to have multiple reps with that person before I hire them personally, just because if you make one mistake, it's hard to come back from that. But I would say one of the things that Mike Weinberg has taught me is never hire anybody who isn't the median of your team, who won't come into your team and elevate your team and push them. And so I like to hire people who are smarter, faster, better than me, who have higher ceilings than me, because the better hire I make, the better, as a manager I do myself.
Amen. I love that, right? And you want to constantly be raising, I call it raising the watermark. A lot of times, though, people can only hire at their own level or below their own level. So what are those 5 distinct criteria that you implement during your hiring process? Because let's face it, a lot of people only hire to their own level.
Yeah.
How do you said you hire people better than you.
Yeah.
So what are those 5 criteria that allow you to do that?
Better than me, or have the potential to be better than me, right? That's kind of the criteria. So the first step is rapport, right? Just like me and you had when we kicked off this call before we went live. You're very good at that. You're very good at building relationships. So that's one of the first things I look. Would I buy from this individual, right? At a very simple level. So getting to know their background, tell me about your background, tell me where you're from. I want to know all that stuff because that helps me understand the candidate at a deep level. So I look at, number one, would I buy from this individual? The second thing I look at is kind of like me and you talked about has that individual gone through any adversity in their life? And that could be sports, it could be activities, it could be sometimes personal experiences, but have they ever had to achieve anything? Because like you and I both know, sales is a very tough industry. It can be tough if you're not tougher, right? And so has this individual gone through anything? Did they work their way through college? Did they earn a scholarship? What have you? Or was everything kind of handed to that person? And so that's not a make or break for me, but I really love like D2 and D3 college football players. They know they're not going to go play at the next level. And then they still go kill themselves in 2-a-days for 4 years. Like that type of work ethic is something that translates perfectly into sales. So number one, I look for that rapport. Number two, I look for challenges and adversity they've come across. Probably my favorite one is sales process. I love a sales process, and I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that. And do they have a distinct sales process? It doesn't have to be mine, but I want to know. I kind of liken it to form in sports like basketball. If your form is off every shot, what's going to happen? You're going to have inconsistent results, right? So if their sales process, if they just start talking, I like to say, hey, John, if me and you are at Starbucks and I flip over a napkin, what are the distinct steps in your sales process? Like if you were coaching me, could you outline 5 to 10 steps in your sales process just to see how they think? And so I love sales process. I outline that actually in chapter 6 in my book, the one that I use. And then, some follow-up steps. I like to see how, they're actually doing their job. In sales, you're actually doing your job in the interview, unlike other jobs. And so I like to see how they start working me down to see if they're going to close me. And then that closing step, did they actually close, or was it, what's the next step? Kind of a plain statement. What's the next step in this process? Have I done enough to prove to you? Do they do a little bit more than just that in the close? I like to want to be sold to, if that makes sense.
It's so funny. I'm building out a new playbook because I have different software. One is a loyalty app software, and obviously the sales machine is how we manage, track, measure, align, and reward the sales process. And like the stages of the deal. We have stages in marketing. We have so even if you're prospecting, we have stages of the deal for the salespeople, and then we have stages for the customer success. I'm all about process it. And we actually made it customizable because we know that there's so many different sales organizations out there using different methodologies. There's MEDIC, there's spin selling, there's in EPQ, there's, the challenger sales process. I have one that I call, my process is called sales as a service, just like SaaS, but sales as a service, right? And there's 7 steps to that. First and foremost, it's all about connection, right? You call it rapport. For me, it's, it's not about matching and mirroring and just building rapport, but finding commonality and connecting, like we talked about the Atlanta Falcons, right? But I wouldn't, knowing that you love the Atlanta Falcons, I would never bring up the Super Bowl.
Oh, we are still recovering from that.
Dude, my brother lost his attitude for 2 years.
The city's not over it. We're still not over it. Just so you know, we're not over it.
Yeah, 'cause it's painful, man. I mean, you finally get there, and then, wow, you blow it. Anyway, how do you manage, track, measure, and align, reward your team, and constantly keep them focused, laser dialed in?
Yeah, I mean, I think I coached 4 or 5 of them today. I have 10 people on my team, so I have a big team, and so I have processes to that. We talk every 2 weeks, my team and then at the end of close, we kind of have more of just like accountability, or at the end of the month, we have an accountability 15-minute check-in. So I talk to my team every 2 weeks, but I've really built great relationships with my group. The exact way we use a couple different things. We use a software that kind of a CRM that tracks our stuff. And then that's more, we have to do that, but we're starting to come around to it quite a bit. The second thing that we do is I create attack lists, and then we also zone our territory. So those 2 things, zoning our territory, I actually talk about it in the book, geographically outlining the zones that we cover. So if just taking the state of Georgia, big box, big square, kind of a northeast, northwest, central, southeast, southwest, and which accounts are broken down in those markets. So when we're physically there or virtually, we can effectively work those. So we kind of have a big playbook in our zone, and then we have a attack list, and that is what are the 3 to 5 different things this week we can do to move the needle. And we're laser focused on our weekly attack list, as we call it, on my team.
Right on. And what do you think as a sales leader is key, or I don't like just saying key, because I think, success is really a combination. It's multiple things you can do. But what do you think are the keys or the combination to actually driving a top sales team?
That's good. And it's something I think about every single day. So I think ultimately, to simplify it, I break it down to team health and high performance. And so high performance, like we talked about earlier, is a standard, but also team health. I'm constantly building leaders. I think leaders build other leaders. So I have a handful of folks on my team who are my immediate leaders on my team. And so vision is something too. Is a vision compelling enough to make the team want to work for it? This year, my team, we have the chance to be the region of the year, and we have a nice spiff, nice payout for that, great trips. So the vision right now this year for my team is very strong. But ultimately, I break it down to team health and high performance. And if your team, if you focus too much on team health and everything's hunky dory and everybody is okay and all that, high performance suffers usually. If you focus on high performance and not focus on team health, the health suffers and people are not engaged. And I think that sweet spot is really focusing on both. We're a team of excellence. Best is a standard is one of our core values. And so we're going to try to be the best every single time we line up, but we also take care of our customers always, and then character counts. Those are our 3 core values. Take care of your customers always, character counts, and best is the standard. And we try to outwork, outplan, and out execute. And so I try to build that vision and that culture on my team to where people know that they're cared for and respected and appreciated, but also that we're here to win, and we're here to go all out and try to do the best we can.
I love it, man. I love it. And your dad's a minister. And just to resonate with that, my favorite verse in the Bible is, without a vision, people perish,
So
right?
true.
Without
So
a vision, people perish. And I've found, so I manage over 3,000 salespeople, and I've been doing sales and building sales teams for 30 years. But, 7-8 years ago, we were doing it with Excel spreadsheets, right? And what I knew about building a sales team, and really I worked with the sales leaders, like 200 of them have their own businesses, their own offices. And I just, I created systems. And now they're automated in the sales machine. Because truth be told, I couldn't keep up. And, I went to these CRM companies, and to me, that's a CRM.
Yeah.
They're just address books. So what I found was what really drives, have you heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages? Yeah. So what motivates one guy is not going to motivate the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've found, and you can chime in on this, is what drives sales performance is rewards, recognition, competition, and compensation.
Yep.
Those are the keys. And the best of the best, they want to compete to get better, not to beat someone else, but to set a new standard even for themselves. What's been your experience with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree completely with you. We always, yeah. So we have at the end of so we have a bulldog belt. So we've got like one of those WWE type wrestling belts, and it's we're the bulldog. Yeah. So we have a big bulldog belt, and it's fun because, my team has fun with it. So they get the belt if you win for the month. They get a big glass trophy, kind of like one of those glass trophies up there in the corner of my screen. I don't know if you can see that or not. But we do a big glass trophy. So the belt and the trophy for number one, and then there's cash payouts with that. And I make a big deal of who wins per quarter. Excuse me, it's a quarterly belt. And then I have a second place and third place. So I have a team of 10, and I recognize with financial rewards the top 3. And so we do that. You get the belt for the quarterly, and then you get a big, nice glass trophy with your percent over plan. And then I actually have a Bulldog Award, who is really a focus on leadership, hard work, and that's more of a cultural piece. And they get a nice smaller glass trophy for that. And that's team voted on. And so if you're a good teammate on my team, you get a cash payout, and you get that quarterly glass as well, which is a fun thing that we do.
Hey, I love that. I love that because, we built that into the sales machine, but you just gave me an idea because we've automated that from coaching to competition, contest, reward center. Like they can pick their rewards, whether it's a trip to Hawaii, whatever. But I love what you just said about the team voted award, because my platform doesn't do that, but I could definitely have that coded in there.
Yeah.
That's magnificent. That's a great idea.
So
it's just like the MVP of football teams, right? The coaches don't choose the MVP of the team. It's all the players that choose the MVP of the team.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, and I watch that all the time, but I didn't incorporate that in the system.
Yeah,
but I will now.
Yeah, that's an important one. That's one that people feel really good about because it's a peer level motivation. Be a good teammate, answer the phone when they call. And it's cool when they receive that. That might be my favorite reward. And I came up with it a few years ago because one of my TMs had a financial situation where one of his accounts was re-tiered, and basically he couldn't hit plan for the year. It was just an impossible, but he never gave up. And it was something that watching him day in, day out compete all year, knowing he wasn't going to catch this, something that he didn't cause. I decided to create the award after this individual because he just impressed me so much. And just something came to my mind to create that award, and leadership, hard work, never give up attitude, and being a good teammate. So those are the kind of the criteria that we look for.
I love it, man. I love it. I consider that too because we are constantly recruiting new salespeople, right? And for me, whether they have experience or not depends on the division or the product because we have several different products, whether it's skincare, we own our brand, Aqua Plus, whether it's software, Fun Crowds is a loyalty app for small businesses. The sales machine is enterprise level for, scaling and managing a sales team. In saying that, we put challenges. So we have contests and we have competition, but we have challenges because when those things happen, and we have coaching in the platform, when those things happen and it's outside the individual's control, it's, like this guy, he went the extra mile even though he wasn't going to win, right? So I created challenges even for new salespeople and or situations like that. So when a situation like that happens, I say no problem, brush it off, right? So let's look at your goals, corporates call them KPIs, and let me challenge you. So where you're at right now, you can challenge the individual individually rather than and or collectively on a team. But that way they can still hit their goals when shift happens, right? We'll call it shift, right? So when shift happens, we shift and we do it so that the individual can still win. I mean, for me, I know that sales is the highest turnover occupation on planet Earth, literally, right? And not just for salespeople. The average, I was reading Mark Roberge's book, Sales Accelerator Formula, right? And Mark he built HubSpot. He was on my podcast like a month ago.
Cool.
He said the average, it was either him or Addis. Anyway, a sales VP average tenure is 1.5 years. Did you know that?
I'm not surprised. I did not know that, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So let's talk about retention because as far as not just running and building and scaling a sales team, knowing that it's the highest turnover occupation in the world. Yeah. It's tough. Like you recruiting those football players that know they're not going to make it into the NFL, but are willing to do two-a-days. That's a great talent pool right there.
Yep.
So what do you do to retain your people?
I think number one, I set the standard high initially. But I support them, and I'm known in my organization as somebody who deeply cares about his people, almost to a fault. Like I'll take a bullet for my team because I feel like they're putting their effort out for my benefit as well. So I'll do anything for my team. So once I hire them on, I set the vision and standard high, and I invite them into that bigger picture. So, and I help them understand that they have what it takes. They wouldn't be on my team. They may be on some other team, but they wouldn't be on my team if they didn't have what it takes. And so I really try to develop them. I spend intentional time with them in their territories. I try to be with every rep, and I have 10 now, 2 days every quarter at least in their car. And so I'm constantly flying from city to city. I cover 7 states down here in the South. And so we're always moving. And so I'm working with my team. I get in the field with them. I set the vision high. And then I develop them. I intentionally help figure out what their goals are and help them understand how to get to the place that they want to go. And so we do beginning of the year summits where we outline our goals and what they want to achieve. And then I'm just very intentional and helping them get there. And now my reps who reach a certain standard, I bring in and I do non-business talk, leadership development calls with them. So I'm sitting down with them and I'm bringing the learnings I have from people like you and others. And I share with them a playbook that I have that will benefit them in their careers, hopefully. And so I think they're really appreciative. So I think leaders build other leaders, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I love it. And I've found out the same thing, right? Because I've went so deep into the psychology of sales. Like for me, my psychology of sales is the same as Zig Ziglar, right? It's really SSS. So when you think about service, you're never nervous. You think about solving problems, you're curious. Like this is a superpower in sales, right? For me, like how can I solve a problem and give this individual the pieces of the puzzle? So even I'm always selling to and serving my people. And you're obviously a servant-based leader. I love that. I love that about you.
Yeah.
And what I've found is the reason why that sales has the biggest turnover is because, first and foremost, the companies need to be selling to the salespeople. And the way we do it, the way I've been doing it, and what I've actually distinguished what works the best is, number one is the environment, right? In order to retain the people, because they can have a high pressure environment or a toxic environment. It doesn't matter how much money they make. Eventually, if the environment's not right, they're going to go.
Yep.
They're going to leave. And second is actually the relationships, right? If people feel like they're a part of a team, that's going to keep them around. Even if they're struggling or if they're having a tough time, when people are part of a team, they feel more united than ever before. And a lot of sales companies don't do this. So for me, in our organization, everybody's got a buddy. Everybody's got a buddy. We work the buddy system. We put everybody on teams because we know individually and collectively together, we build that relationship and we retain the individuals for a lot longer. The third one you mentioned, these are my pillars for retention, but you mentioned already, is growth, because people grow or die.
Yep.
Right? It's the law of nature. And so we provide them, even in our software, there's an LMS, a learning management system, so that there are levels of development, like the content that's coming out of your mouth is filmed, put on there, the training, so that there are levels of development. Because when you give people what you said, you paint the picture, right? When you can paint that picture and they know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, they'll do it. Especially when they have a strong leader.
Yep.
And then finally, I go back to, the Bible. It's, without a vision, people perish. A vision is purpose, right? So when you have finally a purpose, when you're doing something that's good for is good for you, good for others, and serves the greater good and is purposeful, people will stay with you 20, 30 years until they retire. I love what you're saying, man. In saying that, because I'm a sales leader and I'm really a sales trainer, and I love to do sales, and I love that you went out in the field. The other day I went out in the field. My guys were having problems prospecting, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me show you how I made my first $1 million. Check this out. Knock, knock. I said, jump in the car, guys. And we went to the mall and they were having challenges getting leads. We got 130 leads in 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
Like just knocking it out.
That's so good.
So I love that. So what do you think is the biggest mistake or the most common mistake that salespeople make?
That salespeople make. I talk about this a lot in, right now, I think the biggest thing people overlook, and I talk about this a lot in my book, is the first step in any good sales process. I think this newer generation isn't taking the time to pre-call plan. I think we're so fast-paced, our attention spans are so small, but if there's an account or there's an individual that we want to call on, spending 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes intentionally researching, intentionally looking on websites, social media, all different kind of things about that buyer. I think that first step in the sales process, to me, is one of the biggest overlooked mistakes. And people are going in and trying to wing it based off personality. That doesn't fly.
100%. And this goes back to what you said earlier about having a process, right? You don't really like it because I always say this too, like if you want to win it, you can't wing it. And if you don't have a sales process, you're winging it.
Yep.
You're losing more sales than you're going to get, right?
Spot on.
So, and this is why with prospecting is so important for me. I want even my salespeople to be involved in generating leads, prospecting, because what you just said is spot on, because 50% of the sale is made from the preparation. not showing up and throwing up, which is a common term nowadays, right?
100%. 100%. Yep. Me and you could go on forever on this.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. But I love it because it's solving problems. It's helping my people. I'm in service to them.
Yep.
Makes sense? So, like, the prospecting, a lot of people in psychology have blind spots. It's called a scotoma. Have you heard that before?
I don't know if I've heard of scotoma, but I know what obviously blind spots are. Okay.
Yeah. Well, aren't you a psychology graduate?
I am a business management graduate.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's Scott Least. It was on here right before you.
Cool.
He's a psychology graduate. So in psychology, so I like to make my success automatic. And the only way that you can make your success automatic is really understanding. You got to be scientific to make your success automatic.
Yep.
And there's the science of psychology, right? We all have blind spots. Sometimes we just don't see what we don't see. And somebody can come in and say, well, why don't you tweak this? Or why don't you tweak that? Or did you see this? Or did you not see that? And it can be mind blowing how quickly we can learn when we understand our blind spots, right?
Yep.
So all of us have blind spots. You have them, I have them, because we get caught up in our box, right? We get caught up in whether it's our own industry, we don't cross-pollinate different ideas. And then if we get stuck, the reason why is there's a blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
100%. Oh yeah. I grew up with a dad that preached this constantly to me. So I'm tracking with you.
Right on. Yeah, I love finding out what people's blind spots are because a lot of the time it's not their attitude, it's not their ability, it's just they don't see what they don't see. And that's where coaching is so important. And obviously we know this. So this is why, Michael Jordan had a coach. It's why he had Tim Grover that wrote Relentless as a coach outside of Phil Jackson.
Yep.
Right? It's so important. So in talking about that, what do you think the biggest mistake sales leaders are making, not just salespeople?
Mm-hmm. Again, I have a great mentor in Mike Weinberg. He's taught me so much about sales. My biggest thing is I call it the bad manager. And but I think our bad managers we learn a lot from, and we learn more from the bad managers than we do the good. So what Mike talks about is, are you the hero or are you the hero maker? So I think bad managers want to be the hero. I think good managers want to be the hero maker and develop and lift up their people. And so I had a story where, when I was with the small medical device company before we were acquired, I had a bad manager that told the acquiring organization not to hire me because they thought I was bad culture. Well, that individual was just, I was his top rep. He didn't end up staying with the organization too long because he took that same bad manager approach with other people. He constantly wanted to be the hero. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I'm very sensitive to how hard my reps work. And when I know how hard they work, I'm very intentional with overly praising them when they do a good job to that work. And I never, ever try to get credit for work that they do. And I think bad managers, even if they face value, tell you they're not trying to take credit, there's some kind of deep insecurity there where they're trying to position themselves. So I think when you, like you said, when you're the servant leader and put your team first and never try to take the limelight, it all works out.
Yeah, we do a lot of leaders meetings every quarter, and I built a camp. It's called the Ultimate Leadership Camp. Like I take them out for 3 days into the woods.
Nice.
And we've devised a system. A Socratic leadership style instead of autocratic, where autocratic's like a dictator. Socratic is like enrolling them, but we still use meritocracy in our organization, right? But I put them in exercises, right, where they have to lead an exercise every day. Every person on a team leads twice, and whether they succeed at the task or fail, they're allowed to get feedback, but they're only allowed to say thank you.
Wow.
or this is what I heard. And people spin, dude. They just spin when they fail, and they get feedback from their team, and they're not allowed to rationalize. They're not allowed to justify, or they're not allowed to blame.
Wow.
They're just allowed to accept the feedback, right? And people come out of that like transformed.
Yeah.
They're just blown away. In resonance to what you said, I've been doing this a long time. So every quarter we do these leaders meetings. Every year we have an annual awards night like the Oscars, and we present all the awards, and we make it totally glamorous, right, to celebrate our people. I think it was like 10 years ago. I've taken myself out of the game, right? Like I run the show and everything, but more and more we've just had everybody else run the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just come up, shake hands, and stand in the back, right? And people are like, why don't you come up and speak more? And I'm like, because my leaders are speaking. And this is the greatest joy of my life, because now I get to lead from behind. I'm on the back. I'm behind all the scenes, and look at these guys go.
Let's go. I love that. That is awesome. It's a testament of a true leader right there.
Yeah, well, I love to see people win. I love developing leaders, changing lives. Like, it's magical when I see, we do car programs, we do annual trips, we have house programs, we give away, Piaget watches, AP watches for our vice president. And these guys started with nothing. No, nothing. Everybody in our organizations, we don't hire managers outside. We only build them from within. What's been your experience developing your people? And how many levels of development do you have in your organization?
Yeah, so many of the same things you just discussed. We always love to promote from within as well. We have multi-promotional steps. We have title adjustments. There's, call it 5 to 7 different title adjustments that you can move up. We do, like you talked about, we do we call it national sales meetings. So we do a big national sales meeting where we reward our top performers financially with big trophies, with, just a ballroom type event. So we do that. We have pay and title tiers, right? The more you produce, the longer that rewards both tenure and performance. And then we do other things that kind of reward based off performance. So we kind of have like a structure like silver, gold, diamond, platinum, that type thing, where we kind of reward with, like you said, fancy watches when you get to silver. And then once you get to gold, it's a fancy watch. You already have the fancy watch, so it's a financial reward. And so people kind of see how they're doing based off their counterparts, right? And they get to see people grow, and it is just invigorating being part of a high performing organization. So yeah, I think all those things you just outlined are very similar things that we do. And obviously, we keep talking about the same thing. Leaders build other leaders, and you're doing it in your organization. And that's what we try to do in ours.
Right on. What is the biggest challenge you've ever faced leading an organization? And whether it be in COVID, which is a black swan event, or, the 2008 crisis. I've been in the game. I've dealt with, economic crises all over the world.
Yeah.
The tiger economies in Asia melting down, dictators being overthrown in different countries.
Yeah.
I've dealt with lots. But what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced as a sales leader?
Wow. So I'll get a little vulnerable with you on this one. So this is actually in 2020. I live here in Atlanta. COVID just hit, and we're leading our teams through COVID. And had an individual on my team pass away, of all things, during that period. So not only were we hit with COVID, but had an individual unfortunately pass away during that same time period on my team. And I still remember having to break it to my team where we were on a Zoom call just like this. And, I had HR on there, I had my director, and I'll never forget kind of some of the, again, I'm being a little vulnerable with you here, but never forget some of the sounds made from fellow teammates when I had to tell them one of theirs passed away. And so fast forward, we were at the funeral. My whole team flew in. We live in neighboring states, and people drove in from across the country. And it was really cool to come and pay our respects. But also at some point, his family knew a bunch of his work friends were there. and the pastor asked, like, hey, does anybody have anything to say? And I prepared something and raised my hand and went up in front of everybody and sung the praises of our friend that passed away and really rewarded him. But our team has bonded in a way where, like, talk about bonding, there's a unique culture to our team that still exists to this day. And that was 4 years ago, but that was by far the hardest thing and I hope no one else has to go through that, but the hardest thing that I've ever gone through.
Hey, I get it, man. I've lost a lot of people, weird circumstances and like motorcycle accidents, unfortunately, drug use, people, spiral out of control. Yeah. Heart attack, stroke.
Yeah.
Jaliner, Valentino, Cyrudin, like so many. I understand, man.
Yeah.
It's the toughest thing, especially when they have kids, right? So like I went on to take care of a lot of my people's kids and continue to just pay them out overrides off whatever sales would have had because, when they pass, the family really suffers, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that. Yeah. And I get it. I get it. But what do you think the biggest challenge sales leaders face now pivoting with AI coming and different, the economy changes all the time. Situations change all the time. AI is coming.
Yep. What
do you think the biggest challenges are going to be for salespeople around the topic of AI?
Yeah, this is a good one. I think at the end of the day, people want to buy from people. They don't really want to buy from, if you're outside B2B rep or you're outside selling, we're not at this point accustomed or have a desire to buy from a machine at this point. Now, AI definitely has its place. There are some nuances. I'm sure with your technologies, there's some great ways you can fit it in and make people more productive. So AI definitely has its place, but I think we have to be careful for it not to overlap to the relational level. And we have to be careful with sales reps, as you and I both know sales reps, not to get lazy and to try to cut corners with AI, right? And the important things they need to keep doing themselves. But I think AI needs to be more supplementary rather than key driver in sales. Because I think at this point where our world is, particularly here in the US, we still very much value that in person. We still very much value that relational sale.
Yeah, I had Jeffrey Gittimer on the podcast. He wrote the Little Red Book of Sales and the Sales Bible, and we went on for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then he's like, "I'll write the forward to your book, John. Put out the book."
Yes,
and I'm like, "It's in progress." But Jeffrey, if you look back at the Little Red Book of Sales, it's all about know, like, and trust. And so whenever other sales leaders, or if I'm on a podcast, they ask me about AI. For me, AI is just a co-pilot. So the salespeople that embrace it and use it as their co-pilot, whether it's for research or generating leads or finding out information, the salespeople that embrace it and use it as their co-pilot are going to be the ones that are better, faster, more efficient. But as far as individuals buying from AI, it's so far away. If it's not fast moving consumer goods, I mean, people buy from Amazon. They don't need to be convinced as far as fast moving consumer goods. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about high ticket, mid ticket, or large ticket enterprise level equipment, like you sell MRI machines, $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, they don't yet trust AI. People do not trust AI yet. So just knowing that, to me, it's common sense.
100%. I love that analogy of the co-pilot. Yeah. But what a great way to put it. Co-pilot, huh? That's good, man. I'll give you credit for that, but I want to start using that because that's the way it should be.
Yeah, we put it in the sales machine, AI, because now it cannot do what the sales machine does, but it can do queries and it can it can speed up the amount of time because you can just push a button in the sales machine and say, show me the top sales leaders for the past 5 months and or the trends.
Mm-hmm.
Bang. You don't have to type all that in. Just ask it, man.
So good.
Boom. Right? Show me the leaderboards. Bam. Right? Show me who's doing the best we even managed, track, measured the customer success teams. Like when we fulfill the products and onboard the clients, we even track them because we want them to be rewarded, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way, after the sale is made, you don't lose the sale or lose the customer, right? So I'm in alignment with you. AI has its place. Now, as far as you jumping on the podcast, potentially, how can you leverage this with your team, either for training and or for recruiting? How can you leverage this to help you and your team grow?
Yeah, this particular podcast and all podcasts, but I think that, one of the benefits of being on platforms like this is it does give you a little bit of notoriety. I mean, I had people, I did an event, a speaking event this past Thursday evening and in Atlanta, and there was a handful of people just showed up because I was an author and they knew of my book and they wanted to be there because of that. So I think podcasts, and it's funny in certain interviews now, I'm talking with folks and they're like, yeah, I've listened to like 3 of your podcasts. They were great. I love this, that, and the other. And so it's that going back to pre-call planning that we talked about earlier, those particular individuals wanted the role so bad that they listened to 3 different podcasts that I was on, right, to study more about me. But I think ultimately it's not about me. I think these platforms, my goal is for legacy and is to add value, particularly for me, for that newer generation coming up. So, a lot of people want to get together and they want to grab coffee. And what I'll do is, if they read the book and they go through it, that makes our conversation, that 30-minute or an hour coffee, way more fruitful because the 18 chapters I have in the book are the 18 different coffee lessons I would give over a period of time to others. So long-winded way of telling you these platforms and podcasts I love, and I'm honored to be with you today. And then hopefully it touches the ears of some listeners out there.
I love it, man. Relentless Salespeople is the book. Relentless Sales. Where can they get the book, Jon?
Yeah, Amazon.com. So just type in Relentless Sales, Jon Alwinson. You'll find it. Would love to connect with your audience on social media. I'm on all the platforms. So shoot me a connection on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Would love to connect with you guys.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love to promote the book, man. Any way I can support you, let me know. I'll get some copies of the book, definitely for my sales team. And, it's going to be, like you said, just like having coffee conversations about how to get better.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm all about. And I love that you are too. Thanks for the support. And thanks so much for having me on, Jon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. Great insights. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Jon Alwinson.
Thanks again, Jon.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to send a review about what you liked on this podcast or share it with somebody who would need it to definitely improve their business, building and scaling sales teams, do me a favor, like, share. It means a lot to me so that we can help others grow and live in abundance. That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.